Tyler Benson thought his life was safe, quiet, suburban, and meticulously controlled. His two-story craftsman home in Denver, Colorado, was his sanctuary, a fortress he designed to keep the world at bay. At 34, his life revolved around his freelance web development work and his carefully curated routines. But Tyler wasn't just methodical, he was obsessive. His home wasn't just clean and organized, it was secure. After reading about break-ins in other neighborhoods, Tyler had installed a full ring security system, motion-activated cameras inside and outside the house, all synced to his phone. The cameras provided him with what he craved most: control. Before leaving for a much-needed vacation in Miami, Tyler tested everything. He checked the locks on the windows, adjusted the camera angles for perfect coverage, and stood in his kitchen, waving at the camera above the fridge. His phone buzzed with a motion alert, showing his own face staring back at him. Everything worked perfectly. Confident his home was protected, Tyler locked the door behind him and left for the airport. But sometimes, the thing you think is protecting you is the thing that betrays you. Miami was exactly what Tyler needed: sunshine, sandy beaches, and his best friend Luke dragging him from bar to bar. For once, he wasn't obsessing over his house or his cameras, but he still checked his phone occasionally. The Ring app sent him motion alerts every few hours, showing mundane clips: the mailman dropping off a package, a squirrel darting across the backyard. Tyler found them comforting, proof that his house was fine. On the third night, as Luke snored in the next room, Tyler lay in bed scrolling through his phone when a new alert popped up. Motion detected. Kitchen. He frowned. The indoor cameras rarely triggered. He opened the app, expecting to see shadows or a bug. Instead, he saw a man. He stood in the middle of Tyler's kitchen, perfectly still, his back to the camera. He was tall, dressed in dark clothes, and seemed almost statuesque. Tyler's chest tightened. He tapped the microphone on the app and spoke, his voice trembling. "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" The man didn't react. For a moment, Tyler thought it was a glitch. Then, the man tilted his head slightly, as if listening to something. Slowly, he stepped out of frame. Tyler swiped to the hallway feed. Nothing. The living room. Empty. He switched back to the kitchen. The man was gone. Tyler called the police immediately. He stayed on the phone, staring at the empty camera feeds while officers swept the house. When they called back, the report was brief. No signs of forced entry, no broken locks, nothing missing. The house was empty. Relieved but confused, Tyler opened the Ring app to show the footage. But the recording from earlier that night was gone. Not just the clip of the man, everything from that evening had been erased. The police suggested it might have been a glitch or a prank, but Tyler knew what he'd seen, and he couldn't explain why his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Back home, Tyler couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He scoured the Ring app, searching for clues. Everything seemed normal: motion alerts from passing cars, a neighbor walking their dog, but the missing footage haunted him. A few days later, Tyler found something even more disturbing. In the Ring app settings, he noticed an unfamiliar device had been connected to his account. It had accessed his cameras the night the man appeared. Someone had been watching his house, watching him. The next motion alert came at 1:13 a.m. Tyler was in bed, scrolling through Reddit, when his phone buzzed. The notification read, "Motion detected, living room." He opened the app, his pulse quickening. The camera feed was dark and grainy, but for a split second, he thought he saw a shadow move in the corner. He stared at the screen for minutes, waiting for something to happen, but the room remained empty. Over the next few nights, the alerts became more frequent. Kitchen, hallway, living room. Each time, Tyler opened the app to find nothing there. But the unease grew. He began hearing faint noises, soft creaks, whispers just below the threshold of understanding. When he replayed the footage, the recordings were gone. A few days later, his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, stopped him as he was bringing in groceries. She seemed nervous, glancing over her shoulder as she spoke. "I've been seeing someone around your house," she said. "At night. A man. I thought it was a visitor at first, but," she described him, tall, dressed in dark clothes, standing perfectly still outside the kitchen window. She'd seen him twice, but hadn't called the police. Tyler's stomach turned. The man hadn't just appeared in his house. He'd been watching it. The next day, Tyler noticed something strange. A coffee mug he hadn't used in weeks was sitting in the sink. A framed photo of his parents on his nightstand was slightly crooked. One of his favorite sweaters, which had been folded neatly in the closet, was now crumpled on the couch. At first, he thought he was imagining things, but the more he looked, the more he found. The cereal box on the counter wasn't where he'd left it. The pantry door was open just a crack. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. The man hadn't just broken in once. He'd been inside the house for weeks. The final straw came when Tyler went to the basement. He hadn't been down there in weeks, but something told him to check. The shelves along the back wall were slightly ajar. Behind them, he found a hidden crawl space. Inside were dirty blankets, empty food wrappers, and a sweater. Tyler thought he'd lost. Someone had been living in his house. Tyler installed new cameras the same night, motion triggered with local storage. He wasn't going to let anything disappear again. At 12:47 a.m., his phone buzzed. Motion detected. Hallway. He opened the app, and there he was. The man was standing at the edge of the hallway, his face obscured by shadow. But he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a second figure, a woman, her long, stringy hair hiding her face. She swayed slightly, her movements unnatural, like a puppet on strings. Neither of them moved. They simply stood there, staring into the camera. The house went dark. The lights, the cameras, everything. Tyler grabbed a flashlight and a knife and moved toward the basement. The door was open. From the darkness below, he heard the man's voice. "You let me in," it said. The word sent a shiver down his spine. Slowly, he descended the stairs. The basement was cold, the air thick with the scent of mildew. His flashlight flickered as it swept across the room. The crawl space was empty, but as Tyler turned, he saw them standing in the center of the basement. The man smiled. "You'll never lock me out," he whispered. The woman laughed, a hollow, distorted sound that echoed in the dark. Tyler lunged, slashing with the knife, but the blade met only air. The figures dissolved into shadows, swirling around him. When Tyler woke, he was lying on the basement floor. The lights were back on, and the house was silent. The crawl space was empty. The cameras were offline. On the dining table upstairs, he found a small wooden charm one he hadn't seen in years. Tyler packed a bag and left the house that same day. Months later, Tyler had started over in a new apartment. No cameras, no smart locks, just old-fashioned bolts and chains. One night, as he sat on the couch, his phone buzzed. The notification read, "Motion detected. Kitchen." Tyler froze. He didn't have a kitchen camera anymore. The screen flickered, and a live feed appeared. The man was there, standing in the middle of the room, smiling.